I'm sitting in a rest stop parking lot outside Toledo, Ohio, eating cold discount beans from a dented can at 2 in the afternoon on a Thursday. My 2007 Honda Accord is my entire world now, the back seat reclined as far as it goes, which isn't nearly enough for someone who's 6 feet tall to sleep without waking up with his spine twisted like a pretzel. It's been 7 months of this. 7 months of rotating between rest stops, learning which gas stations don't kick you out at night, which truck stops let you shower if you buy enough coffee. I've got $21 in my wallet, spread out on the passenger seat next to a roll of toilet paper I took from a McDonald's bathroom yesterday. I'm 49 years old, and this is what my life has become. My phone buzzes on the cracked dashboard. I almost ignore it because these days it's either debt collectors or those scam calls about car warranties for vehicles that barely run anymore. But something makes me answer. Maybe boredom. Maybe that tiny piece of hope that refuses to die even when everything else already has. Hello? My voice sounds rough because I haven't talked to another human being in 4 days. Mr. Jason Carter? The woman's voice is sharp and professional, the kind that means business. This is Lisa Bennett from Juneau County Records Office in Alaska. I'm calling about your property, parcel number 8229 in North Slope Borough. I actually laugh, and it hurts my throat. Lady, you've got the wrong guy. I don't own any property. I don't even own this car. The bank does, technically. They're just slow on the repo. Sir, our records show you've owned 350 acres there since 1996. You inherited it from Walter Carter when he passed away. The name hits me like ice water. Uncle Walter. My dad's older brother, who I met exactly one time when I was 8 years old. He showed up at our house in Cleveland driving a truck that looked like it ran on hope and rust, stayed for 3 days, then disappeared back to Alaska. I remember him as this tall, weathered man with hands like leather and eyes that never stayed still, always looking at something in the distance. Mr. Carter, I need to inform you that you currently owe $49,000 in back property taxes. If these aren't paid by Friday at 5 p.m. Alaska time, the property goes to public auction. $49,000. I stare at my $21. You might as well tell me I owe $49 million. There's a pause. Papers shuffling on her end. Then Lisa's voice comes back different, lower, more urgent. Mr. Carter, are you aware that Arctic Oil Corporation has been trying to contact you for the past 3 years? Never heard of them. What about Northern Energy Reserve or Summit Petroleum? Lady, I've been living in my car for 7 months. Nobody's been contacting me about anything except overdue bills. Sir, these companies have been searching for you regarding mineral rights to your uncle's land. They've hired private investigators. They've sent certified letters to 19 different addresses. My hand holding the phone starts shaking. Why would oil companies care about frozen dirt in Alaska? Mr. Carter, geological surveys completed 3 years ago indicate substantial oil deposits beneath your property. The mineral rights alone are currently valued at approximately $19 to $23 million. That's a conservative estimate. The can of beans slips from my hand, hits the floor mat, sauce splattering across my only clean pair of shoes. I can't move, can't breathe, can't process what she just said. Mr. Carter, are you still there? The world has gone silent except for blood pounding in my ears. $23 million. The number doesn't compute. Nothing makes sense. 7 months ago, my ex-wife, Christine, and her boyfriend took everything I'd spent 24 years building. My HVAC business, my house, my work trucks, my entire life. $4.1 million in total assets. Gone with a judge's signature and Christine's satisfied smile. Enjoy being broke, she'd said outside the courthouse. Her arm linked through Nathan Pierce's, the divorce lawyer who'd orchestrated my complete destruction. Maybe poverty will teach you what real hard work looks like. Now this stranger on the phone is telling me I've been rich this entire time, sitting on a fortune while eating from church food banks and showering at truck stops. This has to be a mistake, I finally managed to say. No mistake, Mr. Carter, but you need to understand something critical. If you don't pay the $49,000 in back taxes by 5 p.m. Alaska time this Friday, you lose everything. The land will be auctioned, likely to one of these oil companies for a fraction of its actual value. You have 71 hours? 71 hours. I look at my reflection in the rearview mirror, face gaunt from months of the one meal a day. Hair more gray than brown, wearing a Goodwill shirt with someone else's initials on the tag. I look like a man who's lost everything, which I am. But apparently, I'm also a man who owns 350 acres of oil rich Alaska land. What did my uncle do up there? I asked Lisa. According to our records, nothing. He lived in a trailer on the property from 1971 until his passing in 1990. Never developed it, never sold it, never even leased it. Just paid the taxes every year until he passed. After that, the bills came to you, but it seems you never received them. I think back to 1990. I was 25, had just started Carter Climate Control with one van, $800, and more ambition than common sense. Mail got forwarded, lost, buried. In the chaos of building a business and starting a family, some legal notice about worthless Alaska tundra wouldn't have registered as important. Lisa, I need you to understand something. I have $21 to my name. I can't pay $49,000 by Friday. I can't pay it by next year. Then you need to find someone who can, Mr. Carter. Because at 5:01 p.m. Alaska time on Friday, you go from potentially having $23 million to having nothing, again. That word hangs between us, again. Like she knows my story. Like she understands what it means to lose everything twice. Can you send me documentation, proof of all this? I'm emailing everything to the address we have on file right now. Jason Carter 2001 Gmail. Yeah, that's right. The one thing I've managed to keep, a free email account. Mr. Carter, may I speak frankly? Sure. I've worked in this office for 17 years. I've never made a call like this. Usually it's standard notices about small parcels worth maybe a few $1,000s. But your uncle's land, with those mineral rights, with 4 major oil companies circling like sharks, this is life-changing money. Find a way to pay those taxes. Beg, borrow, do whatever you have to do. Because opportunities like this don't come twice. She's wrong about that last part. This is my second chance. The first had been building my business from absolutely mumming into something worth millions. But that empire had been built on trust in the wrong person, and it crumbled in 9 months of legal warfare. This is different. This is Uncle Walter, a man I barely remember, reaching out from the grave with a lottery ticket he'd been holding for 28 years. Thank you, Lisa. I mean that sincerely. Good luck, Mr. Carter. You're going to need it. The call ends. I sit in the silence of my car, surrounded by everything I own in the world. 2 changes of clothes, a sleeping bag, a camp stove that stopped working weeks ago. $21. Outside, normal people with normal lives drive past on their way to normal homes. They have no idea that the homeless-looking man in the beat-up Accord just learned he's worth $23 million if he can somehow find $49,000 in 3 days. Let me back up because you need to understand how I got here. 24 years ago, I started Carter Climate Control with $800 I'd saved working construction, a used van that burned oil, and a toolbox my father left me when he died of a heart attack at 51. I was 27 years old, married for 3 years to Christine, and absolutely determined to build something that would last, something my dad never got the chance to create. The first year nearly eliminated me. I worked every single day, no exceptions, taking any job that paid, no matter how small or disgusting. Unclogging drains at 3 in the morning, replacing furnaces in flooded basements, fixing broken AC units in the dead of Ohio summer heat. Christine worked as a dental assistant back then, bringing in steady income, while I built our future one service call at a time. You smell like sweat and ducks, she'd say when I came home after midnight. But she'd say it while reheating dinner she'd kept warm for me. Back then, it sounded like love, like partnership. By year 6, I had 4 employees. By year 11, I had 15. Carter Climate Control became the name businesses trusted in Cleveland. We had maintenance contracts with office buildings, restaurants, 3 shopping centers, and the regional medical center. I bought our first real house when the twins, Sophie and Rachel, were 6 years old. A proper house with a yard and a play set, not the cramped apartment where we'd started our marriage. The business grew to be worth $3.1 million, not because I was some genius, but because I answered every single call, honored every contract, and treated every broken furnace like it was the most important job in the world. The house in Shaker Heights was worth $900,000, decorated exactly how Christine wanted it. She'd quit working when the girls started elementary school, said she wanted to focus on being a mother. I never questioned it. Why would I? We were building a life together. Our routine had rhythm. I'd leave at 5 in the morning, kiss Christine while she slept, head to the shop. She'd get the girls ready for school, manage the house, handle our social calendar. She joined the country club, started playing tennis, made friends with other wives whose husbands owned businesses. I was glad she was happy. All those early mornings and late nights meant something because my family was thriving. The twins were smart like their mother, driven like me. Sophie wanted to be a veterinarian. Rachel was interested in architecture. We'd been saving for their college education since the day they were born. Ohio State for both of them. No student loans, no financial stress. That was the dream I worked 70-hour weeks for. Christine started her Thursday night book club when the girls were in high school. Just us wives discussing literature, she said. You wouldn't be interested, Jason. Too much emotion and feelings talk. She was right, I thought. I preferred blueprints and ductwork diagrams to book discussions. Then came the legal education seminars. She said she wanted to understand business better, to be more helpful to me. I was genuinely touched. After 21 years of marriage, she still wanted to be more involved in my work. We should update our estate planning, Christine suggested one evening over dinner. The business is worth so much now. We need to protect the girls' future properly. She'd found a lawyer through her tennis club, Nathan Pierce. Came highly recommended, she said. Harvard Law School, specialized in business structures and asset protection. His office had those expensive leather chairs and dark wood shelves lined with legal books that looked like props, like they'd never been opened. Jason, buddy, you've built something really impressive here, Nathan said during our first meeting. He had that easy confidence that comes from never having dirt under your fingernails or calluses on your hands. Let's make sure it's protected, legally bulletproof. The documents he prepared were thick, full of language I didn't understand. Trust structures, asset transfers, liability shields, tax optimization strategies. Christine had already read through everything, had sticky notes marking where I should sign. It's just paperwork, honey, she said when I hesitated over one particularly dense section. Nathan explained everything to me. This protects us if someone ever sues the business. It keeps our personal assets completely separate, I signed. Of course I signed. This was my wife of 21 years, the mother of my children, the woman who'd eaten ramen noodles with me in that roach-infested apartment while I chased my dream. Why wouldn't I trust her completely? Nathan became a regular presence after that. He'd stop by the house to drop off additional documents. He came to our 4th of July barbecue, brought expensive wine, complimented my grilling. He laughed at my jokes, asked detailed questions about the business, acted like we were becoming genuine friends. You should teach business courses at the community college, Jason, he said once. Standing in my backyard, drinking my beer, eating my food. From nothing to millions. That's the real American dream right there. I actually liked him. That's the part that burns the worst now. I genuinely liked the man, who was secretly dismantling my entire life, one legal document at a time. The last normal day was a Tuesday in April. I kissed Christine goodbye, went to work, solved problems, came home to a house that smelled like roast chicken. We watched television together, talked about Sophie's veterinary school applications, went to bed at 10:30 like we had 1,000 times before. Wednesday morning, Gary, my foreman and the first person I'd ever hired, met me at the shop door. His face told me something was catastrophically wrong before he handed me the envelope. Some lawyer-looking guy in a suit said to give this to you immediately. Said it was urgent. Inside was the end of everything I'd built. The divorce papers were 67 pages of lies wrapped in legal terminology. Emotional misuse, financial manipulation, hidden assets, systematic domestic neglect. Every accusation precisely crafted to destroy not just my marriage, but my entire character. My hands physically shook as I read terms I'd never said, incidents that never happened, descriptions of a version of me that existed only in those typed pages. I drove straight home, breaking every speed limit. The house was eerily quiet when I burst through the door. Too quiet. Then, I saw them in the kitchen at our breakfast table where our daughters had eaten cereal for 19 years. Christine sat calmly. Nathan Pierce sat beside her, his hand covering hers, his wedding ring catching the morning light. Hello, Jason, Christine said evenly, like I'd just come home from a normal day at work. We should probably talk. What is this? I held up the papers, my voice shaking. The end of pretending, she said. Sit down. Let's discuss this like adults. I stayed standing. How long? Nathan started to speak, but I cut him off. I'm not talking to you. I'm Christine. How long? 19 months, she said, lifting her chin with something like pride. Nathan helped me understand what I was really worth, what I actually deserved. The girls know, she continued. We told them last week. They understand. They've seen how you prioritize work over family for 20 plus years. That was the first knife. Sophie and Rachel, my reasons for everything, had known for a week while I'd been going to work, completely oblivious, planning their futures. Get out of my house, I told Nathan. Actually, he said, standing slowly, it's Christine's house. Has been for 7 months. You signed the papers, remember? Asset protection. The second knife. Those documents I'd signed without reading thoroughly, trusting Christine's sticky notes and reassurances. I'd signed away my own home. The business is mine, I said. I built it from nothing. 53% belongs to Christine, Nathan replied, pulling out his phone to show me documents with my signature. You made her majority owner last year. For tax purposes, you agreed. Your signature is right there on page 12. The third knife and the deepest. My business, built from $800 and a dream, wasn't mine anymore. You planned this, I said to Christine. Every document, every signature over 2 years. You planned all of it. I planned my freedom, she corrected. 24 years of watching you come home filthy, pretending to be proud of you, pretending your little HVAC company meant something important. Do you know what the women at the club call you? Jason the furnace guy. And I had to smile and defend you like you were actually successful. I built everything for us, I said. For you and the girls. You built it for your ego. She snapped. Playing successful businessman while you're really just a glorified maintenance man. Nathan's shown me what actual success looks like. I looked at Nathan properly then. His suit cost more than most people's monthly rent. His watch was a Rolex. His smile was the satisfied smirk of someone who'd already won the game before the other player knew they were playing. You're her lawyer, I said. This is malpractice, conflict of interest. I'm her lawyer for the divorce proceedings, he said carefully. Our personal relationship is completely separate. We've been very careful about documentation. Everything will hold up in any court. I hired Steven Rodriguez that afternoon, a solid attorney who came recommended by my accountant. Steven reviewed everything and his face went pale. Jason, these documents you signed over the past 2 years, they're ironclad. You transferred majority ownership of practically everything to Christine. I didn't know what I was signing. That's not a legal defense, he said gently. You're a successful businessman. No judge will believe you signed major financial documents without understanding them. The divorce proceedings lasted 9 brutal months. Every court appearance was a masterclass in legal destruction. Christine's attorney, not Nathan officially, but his partner at the firm, presented me as a controlling tyrant who'd hidden assets, manipulated finances, and emotionally terrorized my family for years. They brought in a forensic accountant who discovered supposed discrepancies in the business books, money that had allegedly vanished. It was complete fabrication, but it looked legitimate on paper, backed by documents I couldn't dispute. 4 of my own employees testified that Christine was the real strategic brain behind the business's success, that she'd been essentially running things from home. Gary told me later they'd been promised jobs at competing companies if they cooperated with the testimony. The judge, Margaret Sullivan, seemed to have her mind made up before I ever spoke a word in my own defense. I learned later that Nathan's law firm had contributed $35,000 to her re-election campaign. Sophie and Rachel wouldn't answer my calls or texts. Christine had shown them fabricated evidence of affairs that never happened, secret credit cards that didn't exist, forged documents. She'd convinced them that their college funds, which I'd protected in separate accounts since they were babies, were actually money I'd stolen from their mother. The final ruling came in December. Christine received the business, the house, all investment accounts, both vehicles, everything except my work truck, and $28,000. The judge called it equitable distribution based on the respondent's documented pattern of financial misuse and manipulation. I stood in that courtroom as the decision was read, watching my life's work get handed to a woman who now looked at me with pure contempt and her boyfriend who'd orchestrated the entire theft. Outside the courthouse, they were waiting for me. You should have treated me better, Christine said, loud enough for passing strangers to hear. All those years of playing the big shot while I suffered in silence. Suffered? I couldn't help but laugh bitterly. In a $900,000 house with a country club membership? Nathan stepped forward. It's over, buddy. Accept it. Move on. Enjoy poverty. Maybe it'll teach you some humility about life. Christine laughed then, a sound I'd never heard from her in 24 years of marriage. He's absolutely right, Jason. Poverty suits you better anyway. You always were just a glorified handyman with delusions of grandeur. They walked away together toward Nathan's Mercedes while I stood there with nothing but the keys to an 11-year-old truck and the knowledge that I'd been completely destroyed by the two people I'd trusted most in the world. The business I'd spent 24 years building was gone. The house where my daughters had grown up was gone. 4.1 million in total assets transferred to my ex-wife through papers I'd signed willingly, trusting her love was real. That night I slept in my truck in a Walmart parking lot. The first night of many to come. The truck lasted 4 weeks before the repo man found it. I watched from across the parking lot as they loaded it onto a flatbed, my last connection to the life I'd built driving away. That night I traded my watch, a $3,000 anniversary gift from Christine, for the 2007 Honda Accord with 215,000 miles and a heater that only worked on the highest setting. The Accord became my home, my entire world compressed into a space about the size of a walk-in closet. I learned the rules of homelessness fast. Rotate parking spots every few days so security doesn't notice you. Rest stops are safer than city streets. Truck stops have showers if you can afford the $12 fee. The YMCA offers day passes for $15 when you need to feel human again. Pride becomes expensive when you're poor, a luxury you can't afford. For 3 months, I told no one. My brother Marcus called twice from Michigan, but I let it go to voicemail. My mother, 79 and living on Social Security in Arizona, didn't need to know her successful son was eating from church food banks. The shame was a physical weight, heavier than hunger. Day labor became my only income. Loading trucks at warehouses for $70 cash, painting apartments for slumlords who paid under the table, moving furniture for college kids who wouldn't make eye contact with me. At 49, my back screamed through every shift, but complaining was another luxury I couldn't afford. The worst part was seeing my old business trucks around Cleveland. Carter Climate Control, the logo I designed myself, now driven by strangers. I watched from my car once as they serviced the downtown Hilton, a contract I'd personally negotiated 7 years earlier. The new guy was using cheap parts I'd never have allowed, taking shortcuts I'd have fired someone for. But it wasn't my problem anymore. Christine had kept Gary as foreman for exactly 3 months before replacing him with Nathan's cousin, someone who'd never held a wrench but had an MBA. Gary found me at a rest stop one evening, handed me $300 through my window. The business is falling apart, Jason. She's lost half the contracts already. Doesn't understand that relationships matter more than spreadsheets in this industry. Not my problem anymore, I said, but we both knew that was a lie. That business had been my child before my actual children were born. Winter in Ohio, when you're living in a car, is a special kind of hell. The cold seeps through every gap, finds every weakness in the vehicle. I'd run the engine for heat until the gas gauge dropped too low, then burrow into a sleeping bag rated for temperatures I never actually reached. Some mornings, ice formed on the inside of the windshield from my own breath. Food became an obsession, constant calculation. The Methodist Church served lunch on Tuesdays and Thursdays. The Salvation Army had dinner Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. Food banks required proof of address I didn't have, but some volunteers looked the other way when they saw how thin I was getting. I learned to make a can of beans last 2 meals, to save packets of crackers from soup kitchens, to ignore the constant gnawing hunger that became my baseline existence. My daughters never called. I sent letters to their dorms at Ohio State explaining my side, begging them to listen. Every single one came back unopened. Christine had poisoned that well thoroughly. To them, I was the villain who'd betrayed their mother, stolen their security, revealed my true nature after decades of deception. 7 months into homelessness, I'd forgotten what hope felt like. My phone kept active only through a government assistance program, became just a clock and weather app. No one called anymore. No one needed Jason Carter, former business owner, current nobody. Depression isn't dramatic when you're homeless. It's not crying or screaming. It's staring at the ceiling of your car for hours, unable to move, unable to care about anything. It's watching normal people live normal lives and feeling like you're watching from another dimension, separated by glass you can never break through. But something in me refused to die completely. Maybe it was my father's voice, dead 37 years but still clear in my memory. Carter men don't quit, son. Maybe it was spite, the desire to outlive Christine's prediction that I'd fall apart without her. Maybe it was just biological stubbornness, the same trait that had built a business from nothing. That Thursday afternoon, I'd been rejected from a construction crew for being too old. Insurance liability, the foreman said, not unkindly. I drove to the rest stop outside Toledo, counted my $21 3 times as if it might multiply, and opened that can of discount beans. Then the phone rang with that Alaska area code, and everything changed. After talking to Lisa Bennett, after learning about Uncle Walter's land and the $49,000 I needed in 71 hours, I sat there staring at my phone for 10 minutes. Then I scrolled through my contacts one more time. Marcus's number sat there unchanged. My younger brother who'd done everything right, built his dental practice without drama or betrayal, who'd warned me about Christine from the beginning, who'd said something felt off about her. The shame of calling him was crushing. But $23 million was waiting beneath Alaska permafrost, and shame was another luxury I couldn't afford. I pressed call before I could overthink it. It rang twice. Jason? Jesus Christ, where have you been? I've been trying to reach you for months. I need help, I said, the words scraping my throat raw. Not for me, for Dad's memory, for Uncle Walter. How much? Marcus asked immediately. No questions, no lectures, no judgment. 49,000. I can explain everything, but I need it by Friday or I lose something worth 23 million. I know it sounds insane. You'll have it tomorrow morning, he said without hesitation. Where do I send it? Thursday morning, I sat in the Juneau County Records office wearing my only clean Goodwill shirt, gripping a cashier's check for $49,000. My hands shook as I passed it to Lisa Bennett, who looked exactly like her sharp, amused voice on the phone. You cut it close, Mr. Carter, she said as she stamped the receipt. The auction was tomorrow at noon, and you should answer your phone. It hasn't stopped ringing since the lien cleared. Before I could ask why, my phone buzzed. Alaska number. Mr. Carter, this is David Morrison with Arctic Oil. We heard you cleared the lien on parcel 85 CU29. We'd like to talk about buying the mineral rights. 90 minutes later, I sat in a Denny's off Highway 2, the only place I could afford. 4 executives from 4 oil companies sat across from me, all trying to hide how badly they wanted my land. I hadn't showered in days, smelled like rest stop sinks, and wore a shirt with someone else's initials. But these wealthy people treated me like the one in charge because I was. Morrison went first. Our surveys show roughly 53 million barrels under your land. We'll offer 24 million for the mineral rights. You keep surface ownership. Patricia Chen from Northern Energy scoffed. 27 million, paid now, no conditions. The third executive, Robert Martinez from Summit Petroleum, waited. When he finally spoke, he sounded calm and sure. Mr. Carter, your uncle's land sits between our active fields. Whoever gets those rights controls future development. That's why we're here. You can name your price. Then what's yours? I asked. 32 million plus 3% royalties for 50 years, he said. That's about 3.4 million yearly. Patricia started to interrupt, but I raised my hand, a hand that had fixed AC units, signed my life away, and dug through trash when I had to. 35 million, I said, 3% royalties, and 11 million wired within 72 hours. Robert smiled. Deal. We signed the preliminary agreement right there in a sticky Denny's booth with truckers eating pancakes around us. The biggest deal of my life happened under buzzing fluorescent lights. Friday, Marcus drove up from Michigan. When he saw my life in the Accord, he hugged me so hard it broke something in me. Why didn't you call? He asked. Pride, I said. I showed him the paperwork. He read everything twice. Stunned. That old uncle saved your life, he said. Saturday at 1 p.m., the wire hit, $11 million. The bank called 5 times to confirm it was real. I stared at the number, numb. My first purchase was a clean room at a Holiday Inn. I showered for over an hour, washing off months of grime and humiliation. Then I called my daughters. Sophie answered, wary. Dad? I'm not calling for money, I said. I just love you. That's all. A small sob came through. Mom said you'd try to guilt us. I'm not trying to sway anyone, I said. I just wanted you and Rachel to know I'm okay. And that I love you. Dad, were you really living in your car? She asked. Not anymore, I said. But even at my lowest, you two kept me going. We talked for 90 minutes. Rachel joined. They were starting to see cracks in their mother's story. Nathan basically living at the house, lies that didn't line up, the business falling apart. Can we see you? Rachel asked. Anytime, I said. Monday, I met with one of the best law firms in Cleveland, not to attack anyone, but to protect what I had now. The senior partner, Elena Rodriguez, read the divorce decree and actually laughed. The irony, she said, shaking her head, because they took everything in the divorce, and because the ruling was final. Your ex-wife has zero legal right to anything you gain afterward. She cut herself off from the fortune she could have shared. That afternoon, I drove past the business I had once owned. A huge for sale sign hung in front of the building I'd bought 16 years earlier. Gary had been right. Christine managed to wreck in 19 months what took me 24 years to build. The parking lot was empty except for one old truck, my first work van, now rusting behind the dumpster. I felt nothing. No anger, no sadness, no joy. Just a strange calm. That business belonged to my old life. Now I finally had the resources to start a new one, this time on solid ground instead of blind trust. The first check I wrote was $1 million to Marcus, 20 times what he'd once loaned me, without hesitation. He tried to refuse it, but I didn't let him. You helped me when no one else did, I told him. You didn't just lend money, you kept me alive. I paid cash for a simple 3-bedroom condo in Denver. Nothing fancy. After 7 months living in a Honda Accord, a small place with a working shower and stove felt like a palace. I furnished it lightly. A real bed, a real couch, and a kitchen where I could heat food instead of eating cold beans out of a can. 3 weeks later, my daughters visited. They stood in my plain condo looking confused. Dad, you have $35 million, Sophie said. Why live like this? You could buy a mansion. Because I learned the difference between having money and trying to show it off, I said. Your mother and I lived for appearances. Look where that got us. Over the next few months, more truth about their mother surfaced. Nathan left her 4 months after the divorce for another wealthy divorcee. The business was falling apart, down to 4 employees from 15. She listed the house, but no one wanted it at her price. She cries a lot, Rachel told me softly. She drinks every night and says life cheated her. I didn't feel satisfaction hearing any of it. Christine had been my wife for 24 years, the mother of my kids. Watching her collapse brought me no joy, only the reminder that greed destroys everything it touches. My lawyers quietly dug deeper and found Nathan had run similar schemes on 6 other clients over 8 years. The FBI stepped in after they traced money he'd hidden through offshore accounts. Nathan was disbarred, arrested, and sentenced to 9 years in federal prison. And Judge Sullivan, the one who ruled against me, suddenly resigned after investigators found suspicious deposits tied to Nathan's cases. Local news blasted it for weeks. I watched it all from my condo, feeling validated but not triumphant. With $6 million, I started the Walter Carter Foundation to help divorced fathers rebuild their lives financially, emotionally, and practically. We offered legal support, temporary housing, job training, counseling, everything I had needed. Our first case was Daniel Torres, a contractor from Chicago, living in his van with his 2 sons after his ex-wife's lawyer used tactics straight from Nathan's playbook. Why help someone you don't know? He asked when I handed him a check for $60,000. Because a man I barely knew once helped me, I said, thinking of Uncle Walter paying taxes on frozen land year after year. The foundation grew fast. In 18 months, we helped 62 men move from homelessness to stable lives. Each success healed a part of me that betrayal had broken. I saw Christine only once after everything. I was in Cleveland visiting my daughters and stopped for gas. She pulled up in a 12-year-old Camry, the kind of car she once mocked. She looked exhausted, carrying the same defeated look I'd seen in myself months earlier. She opened her mouth as if to speak. I finished pumping gas, got in my Ford F-250, and drove off. There was nothing left to say. My daughters graduated debt-free. Sophie became a vet. Rachel became an architect. They visit often now, sometimes bringing boyfriends I try not to scare. We rebuilt our relationship honestly, without lies. Gary bought my old business for $190,000, everything he could afford. I carried the loan and forgave it after 8 months. He rebuilt it, and Carter Climate Control now has contracts all over Cleveland. He still calls for advice, and I'm glad to help. On my desk, I keep 3 photos. My daughters at graduation, my father who died when I was 13 but still reminds me not to quit, and Uncle Walter standing by his rusted truck with me holding fishing poles. On the back of his picture, he had written, "Family grows richer with time." He paid taxes on that Alaska land from 1971 to 1996, around $60,000. On property everyone thought was worthless. He never built on it or sold it. He just held it, almost as if he was waiting. Now I understand. He was waiting for me to need it. Somehow that quiet uncle I met once knew his nephew would one day lose everything and need a miracle buried under frozen ground. The 35 million changed my life, but not in the flashy way people imagine. I don't drive supercars or wear expensive watches. I don't need to prove anything. I learned real wealth is freedom. The freedom to help others, to forgive without bitterness, to rebuild without revenge. Every morning I wake in my modest condo, make coffee, and check the foundation's messages. Stories from men living in cars, eating cold meals, trying not to give up. Each one gets help. The same chance I received because an old man in Alaska believed in patience. Christine stole my money, but she accidentally gave me something priceless. The proof that I can survive anything. Even rock bottom has a lower level, but sometimes that dark basement hides the start of something new. I had the receipt for that $49,000 tax payment framed. It hangs on my wall with a note, the best investment I never meant to make. Uncle Walter died alone, in a small trailer, probably eating canned beans like I once did. But he left me more than land. He left a lesson in patience and long-term care, the kind of family wealth that isn't counted in money but in what we're willing to do for each other across years and miles. Sometimes the greatest fortune is hidden in the most unlikely place. Sometimes it's guarded by someone no one pays attention to. Sometimes you have to lose everything to discover what was meant for you all along. And sometimes salvation comes from Alaska exactly when you need it.